So tonight I want to first thank all of you for coming out tonight. As you can see, if you were at the last meeting, we are a little bit lighter on our crowd than before. And I really just cannot stress enough, we cannot get complacent and think just because option 5 is out there that we're safe. Us on the steering committee, we're kind of 50-50. Some of us think that they're going to choose option 5 with no doubt, and some of us think option 2 is the baby. So we're not safe. Don't think option 5. We've got to keep getting our letters out there. And I really think that is probably part of the reason why our crowd, we still have a good crowd, don't get me wrong, thank you again, but we had a lot more people in the first community meeting, so please keep that in your mind. I do want to thank the PTA for sponsoring this event and helping us get this room this evening and letting us use Sandymount as our community meeting space. And I want to thank the steering committee. I know we kind of talked about who they were the last meeting, but as a member of the committee, I can't even tell you what a great team we have. We've kind of said this through our many messages back and forth throughout the day. I don't think there doesn't go a day that none of us talk. So if nothing else good comes out of this whole thing, I consider meeting all these new wonderful friends, and I really consider you guys friends. So I am very proud of all of you, and I love the conversations that we have, the daily chats, the frequent meetings, and that's really what our Sandymount community is all about. So once again, real quick, we have Jan Garman, if you want to raise your hand, on our steering committee. Joe Goss, who is our videographer and photographer. Terry McClung, who is not here tonight. He had a prior engagement. Karen Alexander, I know you're around here somewhere. There she is. Tara Simpkins, Terry Johnson, Tara Platt, Jen Youngling, who cannot be here tonight as either. But I do, and not that any of these other people in the steering committee have not done a great job, but I want to give a very special thanks to Tim and Patty Brunker and Donna Sivigny. Those two, raise your hand. I don't know what we would have done without you guys. You have dug deep, and let me tell you, deep. When you guys see some of the things tonight, you're going to be like, wow. They have really spent countless hours, sleepless nights, working on this. So I do thank you guys. I think I can speak on behalf of the community. Thank you very much for that. I also want to thank, we have Commissioner Weaver here this evening again with us. Thank you for coming out. I know you've been busy, and we do thank you for being here again to kind of help hear our comments and our frustrations, I guess you would say. And I do want to bring up also, if you all, just to kind of bring you up on the current events, I'm sure social media, you've seen this, but to the parade crew, we won Best Float in the Westminster Halloween Parade. So I think that's awesome, just again to show the community. So I want to thank Tara Platt, Rick Hartwig, Katie and Dale Smith, Holly Schertz, Mary Carrier, and Carrie Farrell helping with that. So tonight we're just basically going to cover our current options, our economic importance of Sandymount Elementary School, the utilization and enrollment projections, our school condition and others, strategies of moving forward, what type of writing strategies we should use here on out, and then we are going to open it up for questions and dialogue. So I do ask that you all hold your questions, hold your comments until the end of the presentation. If there is any specific slide that you want to make a comment on, just jot it down on your sheet. The brochures you got kind of are a little bit of an outline of what we're going to cover tonight. So just jot it down, just so we can get through it, and then it'll be about 30 minutes, and then we'll open it up for open dialogue and all of that at the very end. And just the key thing, we really have to keep our momentum going, and we have 1 week till the Board of Education meeting. So we really need to make the board and the Boundary Adjustment Committee aware that we are not going away. No matter what option, if it's option 5, we're not going away. It's option 2, we're really not going away. So just keep the momentum going, and we'll cover a little bit more of that later. So without further ado, I would like to go ahead and bring up Tim, and Donna will come in a couple minutes to talk about some of the data and go from there.
All right, thanks, Noel. Hi, I'm Tim Brunker. I think become fairly famous through this.
Tim from Mayor.
Anyway, could you advance the slides? Thanks. So first of all, just briefly run through the current options, which have mushroomed since we last were here. We now have 5. First option is still closed Charles Carroll, which is probably not a realistic option. It's going to be chosen. Option 2, the 3 elementary schools, Charles Carroll, Mount Airy, Sandymount, New Windsor Middle School, and North Carroll High School. And option 3 is basically just a modification of that, in which some of the boundaries were changed in order to affect slightly fewer students. But I think when we say option 2, we basically mean option 2 and 3, because for us it doesn't make any difference. Option 4 is the same 3 elementary schools, New Windsor Middle, and in this option the idea was to make Winters Mill Middle School, closing East Middle, and then to redistrict all the Winters Mill High School students. And then last Monday, right, option 5 was announced by Mr. Guthrie, which is to drop Sandymount and Mount Airy from the elementary schools and just close Charles Carroll, New Windsor Middle, North Carroll High, and that would occur in next academic year, 2016-17. And then there would be a further round of closures with schools to be determined in 2017-18. And he did specifically say that Mount Airy and Sandymount would still be on that list for consideration. They wouldn't be dropped. So, if you could, yep, there we go. They haven't, as far as I know, released any official maps for option 5. So these are just the screenshots that somebody took in the meeting on Monday. So that's Mr. O'Neill's head. Right there, the chairman of the Boundary Adjustment Committee. Anyway, so you can see that, hallelujah, Sandymount is still here in option 5. That's us, that little beige area. And really, so where the colours don't match the lines, that's where the new boundaries are. So this is really just taking out Charles Carroll and moving those students into the contiguous schools, as they like to say. We forgot to get the middle school map because everyone was so excited that Sandymount wasn't there. So, but when the high school boundaries are here, and this is kind of interest to Sandymount people because in this option, all of the current Sandymount Elementary students would be districted to Westminster High, which is not exactly what happens right now. So, for the remainder of the PowerPoint, we're just going to sort of summarize the sort of what we think are the best data points that we have, the sort of non-emotional arguments, the strictly these are important things that sort of make Sandymount different or unique or strong points for Sandymount. So there are really 7 major points, and these are not in order of importance by any means. They're all quite important. The first one is Sandymount's economic importance to the county. Second is Sandymount's utilization. Third is the enrollment projections. Fourth is the fact that Sandymount is the only school in the community. Its isolation as a school, the strategic location. And finally, and probably actually one of the more important ones, Sandymount is a school in good condition. So I'm going to turn you over to Donna Sivigny, who's going to go through points 1 and 2. She's done a lot of work, especially on the first one. So if you want those.
It's not very bright.
Oh, okay. Can you see that? All right, so a lot of you probably know me as the data geek at this point. So I'm just going to kind of go through a lot of the things that we've put together. Really, when Sandymount hit the list on September 9th, I think a lot of us were basically saying, how could that possibly be the case? We really want to go back and look at the data and try to understand, is there any reason at all why that makes sense that Sandymount would make the list? And by the end of this whole analysis of lots of data digging, we got to the answer of no, we really can't find a single reason that makes sense to have Sandymount on the list. I think a lot of us feel that if there could be a reasonable case made for it, that would be sad, but we'd almost have to support it, in support of the county. But there is no logical argument that makes any sense for closing Sandymount. And here are some of the things that we found in that regard when looking at the data. So when we start looking at the economic importance of Sandymount, if you look at the current tax data that comes from the Department of the Comptroller, Finksburg accounts for 11.4% of the county property tax revenue. So it's 21 million out of 184 million. So we only have one elementary school in our district, but we generate more than 11% of the county's tax revenue. That's actually the second highest per capita in the county at 1182. The only one that topped that was actually the Woodbine area, which is surrounding the Mount Airy area of the county. The median house price in our zip code of 21048 is $369,000 versus $306,000 for the rest of the county as a whole. That's 20% higher. And we're basically saying that Finksburg is a very strategic location. People move here because they can still get to their jobs in other areas, but they can have a reasonable commute, but we can send our kids to good schools. And we're right along that 795-140 corridor, so we're really a good strategic location. And we're basically saying, okay, we're paying more for our houses, and we're willing to command more for our houses because of that strategic location. If you take the schools out of that equation, we really think that the property values are going to go down. And when you look at Realtor.com or any of the real estate sites, what's the first thing that pops up? It pops up, what are the elementary schools, what are the middle and high schools that you're going to, and the distance from the address that you're looking at. So if you start looking at Finksburg and you put in an address and it comes up as, okay, now the closest elementary school to where you're looking is 9-10 miles away. And that's going to be a significant detractor for people moving into our area. And if you actually assume that property values would drop in the 15% range, we actually have seen lots of articles and gotten feedback from real estate agents that 15 is actually kind of conservative. It could be as much as 20 or 25. But if you assume a 15% decrease in property value, that actually means a decrease in revenue to the county of $3.2 million. So know that Sandymount's operational expenses are only $1.17 million. So we would actually be losing 3 times what we think we're saving. So that's the economic importance of Sandymount. It's not worth closing it because we're going to lose more money than what we save. Sorry, how do we?
I got it.
Great, thanks. So the next one is a tax evaluation. We got this information from the Department of the Comptroller, and essentially what we've done is we've taken a look at all the tax districts. So remember I said there's 184 million of total taxes in the county, and Finksburg accounts for 21.1 million of that, right, or 11%. So what we did was we looked at all the different tax districts in Carroll County, and then we mapped the schools that are in existence around the county to those tax districts. And essentially, this is the school's operating budget in this column here that matches up to the tax districts, okay? So you see, one of the things that stands out is, Finksburg has 1 school in the tax district. There are some that have as many as 10 in the Freedom-Sykesville area. There's 9 in the Westminster area, 5 in Hampstead, 3 in the Mount Airy area. But when you look at the schools, how they're spread out, and what is the operating budget that goes along with those schools, you get this ratio that basically says, if you're under 100% in this ratio, we're subsidizing the rest of the county. We're not getting nearly as much back in schools' operating budget as what we put in as a tax district, right? So there's only 4 areas in the county that actually subsidize everybody else. Those areas are Union Mills, which is where Charles Carroll is. There's Finksburg, Sandymount. There is New Windsor Middle, and Mount Airy. Does that look familiar? So 4 out of the 5 schools that they're proposing closing in option 2 map directly to the only areas in the district that are subsidizing the county. So essentially what this is saying is Union Mills only has one school, Finksburg has one, New Windsor has one. The 3 out of those 4 areas are going to go to 0, right? So we're actually sitting here saying, okay, we're not getting, if you want to say it, our fair share of the tax dollars, right? Because we're putting in 11%, we're only getting a 2% allocation of the school budget. But we're generally okay with that. We understand if we can put our little ones on a bus that's not that far away, you know, it's okay. When they get a little bit older, for middle school and high school, we're okay with sending them a little bit further away. But I don't think any of us are going to be okay with that number going to 0. So that's what this exhibit is meant to show. That there really is an inequitable distribution of those tax funds, and it really shows that Sandymount is a gateway community. We're bringing in a lot of people into this area. We're generating a lot of tax base. We're commanding property values that are 20% higher than the rest of the county. It's just if you close those schools and make that number a 0, a lot of that benefit is going to go away. Now, on to utilization. That's our second point. So one of the key criteria that the BAC was supposed to be using for determining which schools to close was looking very closely at utilization. So Sandymount today is at 83% utilization, which according to several reports is adequate, right? One of the interesting things that we found is that that number does not include the pre-K program, which would actually increase the utilization by 3 or 4 points. So suddenly we'd be at the 87% level of utilization if pre-K were considered. So we think that's a convenient point that was kind of left out of the discussions. It actually impacts a lot of the elementary schools. And elementary schools in general, I think, are being reported as being underutilized because none of the pre-K programs are in here. This number is actually one of the points that we wanted to make was that the 83% is based on state-rated capacity, which is the Thornton formula that you guys have been hearing about a lot lately. But when you actually think about it realistically, like if you know about the MGT report that Commissioner Guthrie had commissioned to go through and do the analysis of the county and the school systems, it said that the state-rated capacity isn't really a realistic picture of how utilized a school is. There's lots of things that are not necessarily appropriately taken into account. And when you look in that MGT report, it basically has Sandymount as 98% utilized in 2013. And just a couple of other points is that there are 10 elementary schools in the list of the 23 across the county. There are 10 other elementary schools with lower utilizations, and some of them are much lower than the 83% at Sandymount. And as a matter of fact, there are no relocatables being used at Sandymount. So we're basically effectively using the space that we've got. And this all, again, comes from the BAC report. But one of the key questions that comes out of all this information is why would you close a school that's being effectively utilized when there are others that definitely are not? So at this point, I'll hand back over to Tim.
All right. Thank you, Donna. So yeah, I'm going to go through the next 3 points here. So this has been kind of my little analysis project, is the enrollment projections. And those of you who've been watching the Board of Education meetings and the work sessions and whatnot, you may have noticed that Superintendent Guthrie gets a little hot under the collar if you start to question his enrollment projections. They're very sold on these. They claim they're very accurate. So the enrollment projections are obviously very important when you're running a school system. You need to know how many kids you're going to have going to your school, not just this year, but into the future, so you can make plans, right? And so I haven't seen the formula, but I've heard that it does include all kinds of factors like new construction, building permits, and all that kind of stuff. So they are trying to get quite a realistic snapshot, really, of what they think the population will be. Obviously, it's a tough challenge. And another thing, just before I get onto this point, is that Superintendent Guthrie also says that the enrollment projections didn't justify building Manchester Valley. So you shouldn't use that argument against Manchester Valley because apparently their own projections didn't support it in the first place. Anyway, they're very sold on their projections. So let's see what the projections actually tell us. So every single elementary school in the system, that's all 23, project to be slightly smaller in 5 years' time, in 2020, than they are now. There's county-wide declining enrollments. And Sandymount is one of those. But there are only 4 elementary schools that project to decline by 5% or less. Sandymount is one of those. So Sandymount has one of the smallest declines in the next 5 years. And then there are only 8 elementary schools that actually project to increase in their enrollment in a 10-year time period to 2024. And Sandymount happens to be one of those. So if you could just switch to the next slide. I'm showing this graphically here. So I don't know how long it is since you've looked at graphs, but anyway, the line in the middle is where we are now. So yellow is the change over a 5-year period, and these are all negative numbers, so these are all declining. Everything is going left, okay? Every single school. These are the 23 elementary schools. So you see Sandymount is right here. It's got a 5% decline, which is pretty low, right? It's only a couple of schools that are less than that. Look at some of these schools up here. It's like 14 or 15% enrollment decline in a 5-year period. And then the blue lines is what's going to happen in 2024, right? So if your blue line is still going left, that means you're still going to be a lot smaller in 2024 than you are now. If your blue line is going right, then you're going to be a little bit bigger in 2024 than you are now. And notice how there aren't many blue lines going right, yeah? Just a few. And Sandymount is this one here, okay? And there's a couple of schools that have got quite significant growth anticipated. Cranberry Station's one of those. But the point is that Sandymount's enrollment projections are much more stable than almost any other elementary school. So why would you want to close a school that projects to be well utilized, is well utilized now, and projects to be well utilized in the future, when there are a lot of schools which we know are going to have 50, 60, 80 less kids in 5 or 10 years' time? All right, let's go on to the next one. So this point's already been made. I'll make it again. Sandymount is the only public school in this community, in Finksburg, and in our zip code, 21048. There are several communities that have many schools in their municipality, Westminster, Aldersburg, Sykesville, and Hampstead, Manchester. All of these communities have multiple schools at each level, and in some cases, some of these schools are not very well utilized. We're not trying to throw anyone under the bus here, but we're just saying that why are you targeting a community that only has a single school in its community when maybe it would be easier to reorganize the students within their own community because they have multiple schools, some of which aren't very well utilized. All right, let's move on. Another thing about Sandymount that seems to have passed the BAC committee by is that we're actually a pretty isolated location here. If you look at how far away your nearest neighbour's school is, ours is actually 5.5 miles away, which is Mechanicsville. 17 of the elementary schools have a nearest neighbour that is closer than that. Okay? And there are 10 elementary schools that have 4 other elementary schools within 5 miles. So you'd think that those schools would be the easiest ones to redistrict, right? Because you've got close by schools which you can move the kids to without disrupting them too much, right? Close by. So again, we've got a nice little graph that we made of this. So this is a bit busy, but these are all the elementary schools listed along the bottom here. And this blue dot here is how far away is the nearest neighbour school, okay? So you can see there, and this is distance in miles up the left. So you can see there are lots of schools with a nearest neighbour that's within 2 miles, and then you suddenly get this big jump where you have a group of 6 or 7 schools that I've decided to call isolated or strategically located schools. They're essentially the only school in their community for a very large distance around, right? So Sandymount is one of these. It's an isolated, strategically located school, as of course is Charles Carroll, and some of the more remote schools in the northern part of the state, county, Tawnytown, Elmer Wolf, Runnymede, etc. Okay, but down here you have all the sort of suburban or urban schools in the municipalities like Westminster and Eldersburg. All right. So I think we're back to you, Donna, for the last couple of points.
Can I just make one comment?
Sure.
It seems like we're such an obvious target because we don't have a large number of troops to mobilize. If you just want to close Sandymount, it only affects Sandymount. If you're talking about closing an elementary school where there are 4 others close by, this PTA can talk to that PTA and that one and say, guys, all our schools are going to get more crowded. We don't want this. We're an easy target.
Yeah, I think that's true. You don't have a mayor either, or
Right.
a town council can
Right.
stick up for us, so yeah,
Right.
I think the easy target is right on, yeah.
Just for the record, if we were to elect a mayor, I think it would be Tim. So as far as strategic location goes, we touched on this a little bit earlier, and it goes very well with the last slide that Tim was just looking at, basically saying that we don't have a whole lot of schools very near us. We're a little bit isolated, and that makes us a strategic location. But in addition to that, we're a strategic location because we really are a gateway community. We're a town where a lot of young families are going to be moving because there aren't necessarily they've got their jobs in Baltimore City or DC metro area, and Finksburg is the first town in. They're basically saying, okay, I can live in Finksburg and I can still get to my job in a reasonable amount of time, and I can give my kids a really good education at the same time. But I can't get into Carroll County much further than Finksburg. This is really as far as we can go and still get to our jobs in a reasonable amount of time. And that's really the distinction that we're making there. And Mount Airy has a very similar argument, where they're very strategically located and they are a gateway community. And we think that this is a key point, that when you look at everything in just an education vacuum, you would completely miss, right? But we really are a strategic location, and the way that we can get ourselves out of this long-term situation that we're in is we need to attract young families. We need to attract businesses into our county. You're not going to do that by closing isolated schools in a particular area that's a gateway community. It's going to work against us in the long term. So, and some more evidence of the fact that we are a strategic location, we are a gateway community, is that our property values are 20% higher in our zip code of 21048 versus the rest of the county. And our enrollment projections are stable, as Tim pointed out earlier. We are going to see a small decline over the next 5 years, but then we're going to bounce back and we're going to be higher than we are today. That's not true of a lot of other districts in the county. And if you looked at Tim's graph, all of the ones that had the bounce back, with the blue being on this side, were in the gateway, what we would consider to be the gateway community areas. It was Pars Ridge. It was Cranberry Station, right along the 140 corridor. It was Finksburg, and with Sandymount. So why would you, the main point to make is, why would you close a school that helps draw people to the county? And it's the only school in that community. And one of the last things that we wanted to touch on, and quite possibly one of the most important, is the school condition. If you look at the capital improvement plan for the county, there's some really interesting information in there, and the Educational Facilities Master Plan, where we go through and we look at all the schools in the county and we give them an assessment score on the facility assessment, their ability to deliver a quality education to the students. And there are several categories in there. One is good, which means that it's only going to require routine maintenance going forward. There's a fair category, which means the building is going to require some major instructional or systemic upgrades within the next few years. And then there's a grading of poor. That means it's scheduled for significant renovation or closing within the next 5 years, right? So one of the things to make a significant point about Sandymount is it's a school in good condition. The only thing that we need are routine maintenance items. We're on there for a roof and an HVAC system, but so are most of the other schools around the county. Right? But there are several that are in the capital improvement plan that are listed as poor. and those are at the elementary level, Charles Carroll and William Winchester. And at the fair level are Freedom and Mount Airy. Now, if you're looking at non-elementary school levels, you've got East Middle and the Career and Tech Center. And then those are the poor schools. And then at the non-elementary level, the schools that are fair, there's actually a fair number of them. But the point that we really want to make is, why would you close a school in good condition and leave the ones open that we know are going to need huge capital expenditures in the next few years in order to keep them open? You're shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to save, if you looked at option 2, you're going to save $7 million of annual operating expenses by closing several schools in good condition, and then you're going to turn around the next year or the year after that and say, we need $130 million to fix up these schools that are in poor condition, or we're going to have to close them. Why wouldn't you go to those schools first? So if we can go to the next slide. So, and this is straight out of the Educational Facilities Master Plan. So this is kind of, it supports the condition of the school criteria, where the schools that got the lowest rating for the facilities assessment, they are Charles Carroll, Westminster East, Westminster West Middle, and William Winchester. And those are exactly the 4 schools that are up next in the capital improvement plan. And those 4 schools, so there's $20 million in there for Charles Carroll to renovate. There's $50 million for East Middle. There's potentially another $50 million for West Middle, and $25 million for William Winchester. So we're looking at a total of $135-ish million for those 4 schools, but none of them are on the list of the schools to look at for closure. Except Charles Carroll. Thank you. So, and we've done a lot of analysis behind the scenes, and we're basically saying that the BAC hasn't been creative enough, hasn't been thinking outside the box enough. There are solutions out there that it is possible to close. Like Tim said earlier, we're not really trying to throw anybody under the bus, but it is a fact that some schools will need to close. There's going to be emotional arguments around any school that gets thrown up. I mean, we've seen our emotional arguments. We've seen North Carroll's emotional arguments, and they're all legit. But unfortunately, some schools will need to close. Let's make it the ones that make financial sense for the county. Our kids are going to be impacted. It's a sad and sorry tale, but they're going to be impacted. Let's make it worth something so that we don't have to go back into this again in a couple of years. Let's look at the schools that need huge capital expenditures in the next few years. Those should be the first ones to look at for closing.
Should we finish the presentation?
Okay.
Or no?
Sorry, we're switching roles.
Technical difficulties.
Okay.
I'll change
Okay,
the slides.
so getting back to our writing strategies, we definitely need to keep the pressure on the Board of Education, the commissioners, Commissioner Weaver, and our state delegation. So just keep the letters, the emails, the phone calls. We cannot let up on that. That is first and foremost. You can frame your letters in whatever way you're most comfortable. Okay, we've kind of tossed around ideas. Don't support an option, support option 5, just save Sandymount kind of thing. But whatever you feel is the right way to pose your letters, that's fine. Obviously, we want to oppose options 2, 3, and 4. We do want to support option 5, and we certainly don't want to close Sandymount. So just remember that option 5 is the only option that saves Sandymount, with the exception of option 1, which we all know that that's probably not going to happen. If you're convinced that option 2 closes the right elementary schools, then you if you aren't convinced, excuse me, if you aren't convinced that option 2 closes the right elementary schools, then you absolutely have to vote for option 5. Slow and right rather than fast and wrong. That's kind of the sense as to what to get across to the board. Taking their time. I think all of us feel like they're really rushing into this decision and not having all the facts. They don't have the offsets, which I don't really think, they don't even know what the offsets are going to be until they vote on a recommendation. So that's a little backwards, I think. But that's a point. And obviously option 2 and option 3 don't address your capital cost, and option 5 obviously gives us a chance for round 2. And we're all hoping that that's the way it goes. So to wrap up, before we get into our open discussion, and Jan is going to moderate for us, Winters Mill High School Auditorium, 4 p.m. on a week from today, November 11th, so mark your calendars. The parking lot opens at 3. Keep in mind, I don't know what time high school gets out, but 2:20, okay? So we are planning, if you're interested, we have 5 minivans lined up, 6 minivans lined up. If you want to carpool, obviously parking's not going to be fun. We all dealt with that at FSK. So we can carpool. We'll park on the street, we'll park at Target, we'll park wherever we need to be to try to get in line so we can make sure we get in. The doors open at 3:30, and Superintendent Guthrie is expected to make his recommendation to the board on which option he has chosen. There will be opportunity for public comment, just like at the last October 14th meeting. So if any of you are interested in making a comment, please get with Karen Alexander here. We try to kind of plan ahead. I know, Amy, you had something from last time that didn't get called on, so I think maybe we'll try to get the people that have something going first to try to go up first. But we don't want to hit the same points over and over and over. That's why we want to try to get with Karen to kind of organize our thoughts and make sure we're hitting everything that we need to. So basically, just we need you guys there. So I hope that you all can make it. If you have to take off work, take off early. This could be. I mean, we hope it's going to be quite the show, I think, unfortunately. But we do need our supporters. We need you all there in your blue chipper shirts. And I think if anyone ordered from the Spirit Wear, I think that's going to be in on the 9th. So all the more reasons to come on the 11th. Wear your Spirit Wear with pride, and hopefully y'all can make it. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jan. Jan's going to moderate. If you have something to say, it would be nice if you can come up to the microphone, just so Joe can get a good sound quality. So.
Can I just ask, does it make more sense since the parking lot doesn't open until 3, and there's obviously going to be a line to get in? Would it make more sense for us to park somewhere else that it doesn't matter what time?
Well, that's what we're saying. Maybe we'll park at Target. So I think we're going to plan on meeting. Our game, if you're interested in doing the carpool, get with one of us. We'll get your name, email, phone number.
I've got lists over here that
She has a list. You can sign the list. I think we said we'll try to meet at like 1:30, 2 o'clock, and then we'll meet somewhere here. Maybe we meet at the light. I don't know. We'll figure out a place. Drive on over together and then park. Obviously, probably not on the lot. We're going to try to figure out where they're going to let us in so we can wait in line. Just to make sure that we can be seen and we can be heard as well. Because I think we're a small group as opposed to some of the other groups out there that are fighting for their schools as well. So that's it. What?
I'm gonna let Mr. Weaver speak first.
Mr. Weaver wants to speak, so I will let him speak, and then Jan, I'll let you take over. Thank you.
You made some good points, and I've used your presentation quite a bit here that you put out and the points in here tonight. In fact, I spent the last 3 hours before I came here meeting with the commissioners. And the next couple of days, we're going to come out with some things we're concerned about in this to go to the Board of Ed. So that's a good thing. But in your letters, comprehensive redistricting has to happen. in this county, we do have to downsize, but comprehensive redistricting, looking at the right schools, the right buildings for the right reasons, is what we're going to focus on, well, I am right now. And that has to be your concern from the community. And reach out to people from the other schools. If everybody as a county gets together and focuses on the board, comprehensive redistricting has to be done has to be done correctly for this county to save money in the right buildings. And you're right, your savings and debt service is tremendous down the road, and focus on those areas. I think you're a very powerful group. We have a group from Winters Mill, very powerful, a group from Hampstead, very powerful, Mount Airy. However, if you all work together, you can get a lot done. What's happening here, I'm not happy with what I see presently, but if you guys, all groups in the county unite and focus on comprehensive redistricting, looking at closing schools that need major capital repairs, then I think we start to go back and look at the right things to happen in the county. And if you look at those, it takes a lot of these buildings out of the mix and puts it back into the committee to go back and redo their homework. I think they've dismissed a lot of things, overlooked a lot of things that we need to be looking at as a county. So focus on those areas, and that's just my recommendation for you, but if you can say those type things in your letter, follow the plans. Your plan has been phenomenal so far, and they don't have all the facts. They only have ideas out here right now. In fact, your plans have more facts in them than most of theirs, so they have to go back and do their homework and get all the facts together. At the last meeting, I asked them about the debt savings from the state, because every building has a little bit of debt on it that a bond was floated for. And we have no idea if the state's resold those bonds, where they are. They don't have any idea. And in fact, I asked, I think, well, when you're going to find out, it'll take 2 weeks, and they kind of laughed at it. But the fact is, they don't even have all the facts together, and they're making a recommendation. So it buys some time. Let's get this thing done correctly. We know we have to downsize, but it doesn't have to be the way it's done. This is a mess the way it is right now. So thank you all for coming out.
Are the commissioners going to support, he's gonna make this recommendation next week, and then it's gonna go out for public comment. Obviously, public comment is gonna be that we disagree, but that hasn't seemed to change anything thus far. So eventually, it's gonna come to the commissioners, and are the commissioners going to support
Actually,
this?
the commissioners, the only time I was under the assumption, when we build a school, it comes to the commissioners for the recommendation, for their approval, and they move ahead. When they close the school, the Board of Education votes on it, they go out for public comment, they take it to the State Board of Public Works. It comes back to the Board of Education, they come to the commissioner and say, here's your building back.
So they completely bypass you?
We were completely bypassed in the closing of school. The opening of schools were a part of it. I assumed it would just be a reverse process. I was wrong. They totally bypassed the commissioners. But we have a lot of concerns in this program, and we're going to be addressing those very shortly. So
Commissioner Weaver, don't you guys hold the purse strings though? So,
exactly.
right, so if they came to you and said, we have all these capital improvements.
Go ahead and make us mad. But
So will the commissioners as a whole be able to influence the decision of the Board of Ed?
well, I tell you right now, all 5 commissioners are working together on these issues.
So are you steering them in the direction of looking at capital, that's your goal as
Comprehensive redistricting and capital improvements should be the reason.
primary?
Yes,
objectives?
we don't want to lose money, as you pointed out just a few minutes ago. I don't want to be redundant about this, but as you just pointed out, why spend $130 million to save 7?
Right.
Doesn't quite make sense, even though the state will have some participation in that. And we don't know how much that is until they apply for it and with this specific school. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. We can't get a figure on that. So there's a lot of numbers out here floating around that really have no basis.
Okay. I know you said at one of the board meetings that you guys agreed to give back the money that was saved for the school.
Whatever they can save.
But have you guys put any stipulation on it as far as, well, if you guys don't close the schools for the correct reason, then we will withhold some of it? Or is it everything that you save?
Well, whatever they close, the number of schools, that's all up to the Board of Education. The money they can save, tax revenue, can go back for their salaries increases and what they save. Yes, we gave them
Yeah,
that.
but
We've
she's
already
saying
said that would be
If
theirs.
they close schools that you disagree with, can't you hold some of the money back as a threat? That's what she's asking.
Yeah,
Can you
that's-
hold the money back to threaten them for closing the wrong one?
'Cause
Well,
then-
if they close the wrong ones, we haven't solved a thing. And I'm not at liberty to discuss that fact right now. You're seeing in a couple days exactly why, but right now I have to be quiet.
Okay.
So, you're saying like you're not aware of the offset costs as far as it's not been stated what the offset costs are, correct?
Not exactly, no.
Because I'm hearing yesterday that Commissioner Frazier went up against, like, and spoke in front of a group of teachers saying that they'll save $7 to $8 million closing these 5 schools, getting all these teachers on board for these 5 schools being closed, and that money will go directly into their raises. And what I'm trying to come back and tell these teachers is no, it's not going to be $7 to $8 million because of all these offset costs, you're gonna get about $1 million.
That is the Board of Education's figures that they threw out with these 5 schools. However, there is debt service on these buildings yet. Sandymount has $650,000, I think it's a small debt service on it. Charles Carroll has $275,000. North Carroll has $1.3 million. Some schools have $3 and $4 million. I think Westminster High School has $16 million on it. If they close those schools, that money has to be paid back to the state.
Right.
And
But don't the commissioners, all the commissioners aren't aware of this?
but that figure is the old figure. They don't even know what the new figure is on this. Some of these
So
figures
how
are,
can they go in front of a group of teachers and tell them, oh, well, this money's gonna go directly to
well,
your
whatever
budget?
the Board of Education saves, they get to fund
But they're
salaries.
not knowing whether it's gonna be $7 or $8 million at this point.
If they
So it's
close
making
the
sense.
option 5, it would be $5 million roughly, but with debt service paid back, that's $2 million, so they'd save $3 million. And you gotta be careful, they could close a school that actually you'd have to pay back more than what you save.
And then, but they're not factoring in the transportation costs and all that, because they don't know.
And there's a lot of costs that haven't
$1
even,
million or.
haven't even been factored in.
Exactly.
And the loss in revenue.
I read in yesterday's paper that the governor has not released any funds for schools, like 68, whatever, and it's gonna be more money they're gonna have in their coffers next year. Why is he holding a hold up with education?
Okay, he's trying to balance the state budget right now, and he's using this as kind of a balancing thing. Now, I will tell you, our state delegation is working with the governor right now to put money into education in the governor's budget. Now, if they try to do it in session, it's going to get bounced out by some of the larger areas in southern or around Baltimore, Prince George's County. They're going to bounce it out of the budget. The governor's putting it in up front here. Hopefully, that money will stay in there and we'll be able to recoup some of it. Hold harmless is one. It's only, I think it's 1.3 million. I say only, but it's a chunk of change. But when you're talking about the numbers we are here, that it's not a whole lot. But the governor is actually working behind the scenes. And what's said in the paper, don't believe everything you read. You know, it's a lot of misquotes and things in there, but he and the delegation and Senator Reed is really working hard on this to try to get funds allocated from the state to come back to Carroll County. And we have been losing a lot of money in Carroll County, and everything combined is $30 million, transportation, all these issues. So they are working on it, even though it's not public knowledge at this point.
One thing that kind of concerns me as a overall, what I think has come out, to the presentation that you all have made are extremely to the point. I've been a professional accountant for 40 years. My question is, it appears that Carroll County is not providing either the commissioners or the Board of Education with qualified accounting people from within to make the same analysis. And I question the ability to rely on anything that comes out even in the future. I mean, we have to kind of go back. Is that true?
Wait a minute.
In other words, I don't see where the county, within the county government, there are qualified accountants or some accounting people that have give the commissioners and the Board of Education, the Board of Education, the information. with this information, and it's based on fact. Why don't they do it? I really question. what they
That's
say.
my question. I think
We've lost faith in school.
I have too. I'm disillusioned with a lot of the people who I had some respect for in just a couple months ago. I've really lost a lot of respect for what they're doing and the way they're pushing this through. And you made a valid point. Why can't this come out? You did in a week what it took them 8 months to do. And believe me, the work you've done hasn't gone unnoticed. And it's being used right now, and we are using it, and hopefully the results will come out very shortly.
With this haphazard way that Guthrie's running things and his arrogant facade that he's put on in just about every meeting, are the commissioners taking notice? Because this isn't going to just affect the schools. It is going to affect the schools, but as Donna pointed out earlier, if it costs me 1.7 to run this school and I close it, I'm going to lose 3.7. Right? The county loses that, right? So if we're at 60% of the school budget, and he's unwilling to close East Middle, it's a $45 million debt coming. We know it. West Middle, $45 million debt coming, okay? The only school he wants to close is Charles Carroll, that's right around probably $17, $18 million debt. So he wants to keep these two large debts. And when Mount Airy closes, you're going to have the same effect that it has here. Okay? So if we just take the number she gave for Finksburg, that is going to be $4 million out of your budget. So that's going to affect what you give to the police, what you give to the fire department. Okay? That's not counting what it's going to do when you close North Carroll. When you do this haphazardly, because let's be honest, if people take notice and say, hey, look, our government that we're paying for are incompetent fools with our tax money, let's sell my house before the thing goes down, okay, and walk. Now you lose the 5% revenue that you get from each of us from our salaries. So now, theoretically, you're losing 15% of your budget, right? What are you going to do? Because now you still got almost $100 million of debt service he's willing to accept for you.
We're well aware exactly what you said. That's why we're dealing with some of this right away. Everything, this turned out, if there would have been clear guidelines given, I think at the beginning, just this is where our focus is. And our focus is to remain to have a top-notch school system in Carroll County. That's the commissioner's focus, and that's our number one focus. In doing that, we need to retain and attract top-notch teachers. That is going to take some money. Okay, now, the school board, I think, has the same focus, but they've gotten lost in their journey here. And I question, why weren't there people on this committee that were business people, or some people who had some knowledge in these other areas, a realtor, other people in the area? They should have been part of this committee. The Board of Education is elected, they did their job, or they thought, well, they did their job, and they set it up. Well, it's turned into one mess, and now we have people all over the county fighting among each other, fear, about their kids in the school system. It's ridiculous. I think if I picked up a Sun paper and read it in Baltimore and I looked at what they said about Carroll County, I wouldn't want to be here. It's terrible. We're getting a lot of bad press, and it's really not the way the county should be. And that's why I'm asking everybody, join together, put the focus on the Board of Ed, ask for comprehensive redistricting, and close schools that are in bad repair, not the ones in good repair.
What do you think the chances are of nothing being done this year?
I think they're getting better all the time.
What was the question? Couldn't hear.
I said, what do you think the chances are of nothing being done this year
That
after
should
all?
be option 6.
I don't care when it's done. I want it done right.
Yes.
And if we have to delay it, we'll find a way somewhere to come up with some funding or do something, I don't know how yet. Ted Zaleski's our finance person, and he's top notch, by the way, for the commissioners. But Ted is an advisor in this. He doesn't deal with the Board of Education a whole lot, other than keep tabs on them. And when Ted tells you something's wrong, you know it's wrong.
Because where does he stand on this? Where does he stand on this?
What is
Ted
Where
think?
does Ted stand on that?
Oh, he's guiding the commissioners through a lot of this, believe me, so. And you're gonna see that in the next few days, so you see where we are in that. So, I don't wanna dominate your meeting here, but I just wanted to let you know, things are happening behind the scenes. Don't quit. Don't quit yet. I mean, I know you lose momentum as things get started, but you have a lot of good people, fighting for the right things, and you have a lot of people behind the scenes believe the same as you do, so hang in there.
The stuff you're saying we're gonna see in the next few days, before the 11/11?
Oh, yeah.
I'm just joking.
Oh, yeah, way before the 11th.
Will it be in the paper?
Oh, yeah, it'll be public.
Okay.
Nothing's gonna be hidden.
So we know where we're looking.
So I'm hoping best, you know, for a high school, they start electing courses in December. They have to make up their mind here where they're heading very shortly. I think they have to April 30th, 90 days before, I think, to deal with closing of a school. So they have a little time to go back and get things correct if they want to do it this year, or if they elect, they could go back for another year. It's in Comar.
I was gonna say, let's see, to make a decision, school April 30th, which means the school board of Carroll County must decide by April 15th.
Yes, but I think they have a 90-day time before that, they have to go back till, and then they have to have public notices out, and it's 30 days, so it does.
They estimate, in one review Guthrie did, he estimated that it would take 3 years from decision to implementation.
You can, but you can also get an immediate waiver from the state. And by the way, an appeal process is only an appeal to a mistake. It's not an appeal for anything else other than you can prove a mistake was made in the process.
What would constitute a mistake?
There's 8 areas in that Comar regulation that they go through in there, and they're very broadly interpreted. So you have to prove there was a mistake made somewhere in the process. And, you know, they have an attorney following this very closely. It's going to be hard to do, to follow a mistake. I know they've never lost an appeal in the state so far, so that's going to be a tough one. Unless there's a glitch somewhere down the line, or somebody makes a mistake somewhere, or says something, or does something out of character there that they shouldn't, that otherwise a mistake.
Are you hoping that what you're coming out with in the next few days is going to stop his recommendation?
That's up to the Board of Education. We're just addressing our concerns as commissioners, much like your concerns. And I hope we're listened to.
Could the mistake be the process itself?
It could be, but here again, they're broadly written. You'd have to, you know, I've looked at some of these already, and it's going to be hard to, in fact, I've had a couple of attorneys looking at it, and you might have a little piece here or there, but not much for them to bite on. And this has to go to the state public works to come up with that. I don't know if we can find one.
Yeah, only because they didn't have a defined process, really, for the BAC to follow.
Well, you'd have to go back to having the
Yeah, no,
car,
just
the Comar regulations, and you have to look at those 8 processes, and they're so broadly written that it's hard to misinterpret almost any of them. But that's the appeal process you have. So don't think your appeal is like a court appeal. It's a little different at this point. So that's why it has to happen now.
Oh, I just wanted to make the comment that I was in our little town mall this time last night. So many of those stores are shuttered. It's pathetic. You walk in there, there's nobody there, empty, little Verizon store, shoe store, empty. It's depressing to go there. We won't go there. If you take away the sense of community here, we won't shop here either. You know, we won't be going to Food Line and Rite Aid. You know, I just really see this as a downward slide of sense of community. All of a sudden, we're all going to go to Eldersburg because they have that new Super Walmart and they're getting noodles and, you know, there's gonna be no draw to Westminster, no draw to Finksburg.
I know, and look, I've experienced that. I grew up just 3 miles from here. I was always in Finksburg or Hampstead area, usually to shop or whatever. Now I spend more time in Westminster. So where do I stop? Stores in Westminster. I know exactly what you're saying and how you feel about that, and I have to I force myself to go back and to the stores I did before, because I always shop locally or buy locally if I can. But if you're running kids one way or the other, that's where you're going to stop and pick up those items at the last minute and stop for dinner and everything else. And I understand that, and a sense of community is not the school board's responsibility apparently. So that's what we're trying to enforce, some of those things.
I heard, this kind of goes along with Jan's comment about holding the purse strings. Is it true that 80% of the county budget goes towards education?
49%.
80%. It's only 49%?
49%. It was at 50 couple one time. It's dropped to, now it depends how you interpret the budget. If you count capital costs into it as well as operational costs, it goes up. But capital money is usually bonds floated down the line, and we don't count that in that. However, if you save money on it, that money can be shifted back to operational funds later on and used there. So it's about 50% of the county budget goes to education. That's a significant.
You would have some say over.
That was $169 million we put in last year, and the state match is $330 total. I think the school board gets. The state has the other funds in that. So we're asking the board to save, be efficient, save those funds wherever you can, and we're going to try to.
And another part too, is part of their thinking for East Middle, not closing that, is that they want the state to help pay for the $50 million in repairs?
Yeah, whatever it is, depends on the building. They won't tell you, and normally it's 40 to 60% the state kicks in, depends on the project, but they won't give you an estimate until you tell them which school it is and have already decided to close it. You send it to the state, then they will respond with how much they will designate for that project. And remodeling is not as much as rebuilding, if it's an older building or whatever. So we don't have the numbers on any of this. So how do you know if you don't know the facts and figures behind it? How do you know how much debt service is on that building? Well, you have to ask by individual schools to find it, and it takes a 2-week process. That's why I'm asking, get your numbers there and show it to me. If you don't have the numbers, don't ask. Yeah, it's my view of it, but this is your meeting.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you so much. We always appreciate your help. Okay, we have about 15 more minutes. If anybody has any other information they would like to share that they've come across in researching this whole process, or if they have any comments. Okay, we have a question.
Yeah.
Do you want to come up here? I think for Joe it would be easier.
Okay.
Come on,
Really
Amy.
not necessary.
It's necessary.
It's just a quick question.
Okay,
I
all right.
swear. I just wanted to know, the presentation was amazing, and I love the slides, and I just wanted to know whether you have submitted those slides with the graphics and everything to the board and the commissioners. Okay.
Yeah, all the graphs and data ones have been
Okay.
submitted in some form or other to the
Okay.
board of ed.
Because I know at that meeting, we saw packets going to them and everything, so we've done something similar, right?
I mean,
Thank you.
just to be a little bit more specific, I mean, I know Tim and Patty had submitted some plans of if you chose different schools, this is how we think it could be executed, right, within the capacity in the county. They were very specific to the elementary school side of things, and then the plan that I submitted was more of a looking towards the condition and let's save as many capital dollars as we can, because that's really what's going to get the money into the teachers' pockets. And so it's kind of focusing on that and putting forth an option that does seem to be doable based on all of the information that was in the BAC report.
And both of those plans were delivered to the county commissioners, the Board of Ed members, and Mr. Guthrie, and the BAC members as well. So they all had those prior to the meeting on the 29th. Okay, yes.
I just have a quick question. In option 4, it says about closing closing Winters Mill High School. What is, and I don't think Winters Mill should be closed, I don't agree with that, but what is the utilization percentage for Winters Mill? Do we know?
It's like 82% right
Okay,
now.
so there you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
And actually, interestingly, it's like the only high school that's expected to grow at all in the next few years.
They all but threw that out anyway, the last,
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think
Laura
option
basically
4
said,
is.
can we nix it?
Right.
Like,
They've sort of
He
stopped
did.
working.
But Katie, wasn't that on the U.S. World News and Report?
Yeah.
Winters Mill was the only,
Only Carroll
Carroll County
County
School.
school that was ranked by US News and World Report.
right,
of
so,
course they wanna close that.
right, it was kind of mixed at the last meeting. So, good question though, Joy, thanks.
When does the board actually vote as to if they're gonna accept Guthrie's recommendation? Is it that night? Or is it?
No, my,
Isn't it after? Do they actually do?
No, it's December, I think it's
December 9th. So on the 11th is when Steve Guthrie will make his recommendation to the board.
Okay.
Then there's that 30-day public comment period.
The board has to vote to send it to public comment though.
Right, a good point, yes.
Yeah.
And then,
They will vote to say, okay, we accept it enough that we'll let people comment on it. And then after the comment, then it comes back in December for, assuming they have to have at least 4 public hearings. So assuming they've gotten the 4 hearings in.
Does it have to be a majority of the board for them to move forward with an option?
I believe that it does. Although I know they were talking about they would like to have 4 of the 5 at least on the same page. Can you address this?
Keep in mind, public comment only means you get a chance to voice your concerns, they listen. There's no dialogue.
I'm talking about the board
He's-
vote.
He's
They
saying
have
just the
5
board
board
vote.
members, do they only need?
Oh, the
Does it have to
board?
be unanimous?
Yeah,
or is
3,
it-
all he needs 3 votes. However, would you take something to close schools to public comment with 3 to 2 vote? It wouldn't be a smart move, I don't think. I think you'd want 5 votes behind you to do something, so all it takes is a little bit of doubt, I think, in some things. My opinion only.
Commissioner Weaver, while you're still up there, quick question for you. Why did Guthrie dismiss, maybe you know this, don't, why did he dismiss MGT's proposal? Can you shed some light on that
The proposal from,
from MGT?
oh,
The K through 8?
Yeah, because of building the new school.
he did not want, I don't know, the board's operating totally separate here. I don't know why they dismissed any of these.
Was it only because, my theory was that it came up with 3 schools that needed to be closed. And closing those 3, they would build this new school, and he nixed it because he did not want to build a new school.
No,
But then why wouldn't you look at those 3 schools closing and redistricting those 3 schools?
actually, they couldn't find land in the area they wanted to, I think that's one area. However, they built Mount Airy Middle School right next to the other one, built a new one, tore the old one down, and it's gone. And I brought this up just the other day, as a matter of fact. Why couldn't this happen at East Middle? And there's a stream down there, and I think there's an issue perhaps that they're having a little problem with. But I can't get a straight answer on some of these things, and that's why, well, the commissioners are getting very concerned about this. We're not getting straight answers. We're getting the same answers you're getting.
What does he stand to gain out of these decisions?
Do it now.
What does he stand to gain out of these decisions?
Do you mean Mr. Guthrie?
Yes.
What does Mr. Guthrie have to gain from that?
He kind of guides the county through this whole process. You know, the back committee is listening to, I guess, his recommendations on this, or the board. He's kind of the person in the middle on these, and he's very powerful in decisions on this, and he's guiding the whole process, I would think, at this point. And, this is his upper staff doing it. I don't like the process, and I, talking to the young lady in the back, it's been as transparent as a brick wall throughout the whole process, and it's not what should be happening in government. In fact, I'm a little bit too transparent, I'm told.
That's a good thing. That's a good thing.
I don't believe in hiding anything. I don't have anything to hide. I believe people that need to know what's going on in the government, they need to know what your elected officials are doing. And bit too open, I'm told sometimes, but I don't believe in hiding things, and I'm not gonna change now, no matter what they tell me.
Mr. Weaver, when was the last time the county commissioners audited the school board?
They're audited annually. I mean, they're audited as far as money and audit.
How they spend the money?
How they spend the money is public every year. It's brought up, you know.
Because, well, evidently, they've got a tendency to hide money. As in, if you look at the operating capital of East Middle, is very low compared to that. We know it's an old school. It's not been renovated in almost 50 years. There's no way it's got the same operating capital as this school. The maintenance on it alone will kill you. And it's not showing up where it's supposed to. But the other question is MGT report, 100 grand, they just dismissed it. What else are they doing that they're just dismissing?
Well, a lot of things are dismissed, and in this whole process, a lot of things haven't been brought out. The report, you guys asked for information from the board. I'm sure you got some, but they didn't give you everything. And then the response back was, well, you don't have all the facts. Well, they asked for these facts, and you didn't give them to them. So I'm very disappointed with the whole process and the way the board's handling this. And when I was asking about some of the options that are out there, and people have put in, I think they have 14 or 15 options. And by the way, yours is one of the best. They just, one option I mentioned to some of the people there, that's too much work. That was the comment they gave me. Oh, I was livid. I left the last meeting, I was about to color your sweater there. I was mad.
Has Mr. Guthrie come to the commissioners and said, I understand we're in a financial bind here, we need to do something, but I want to do it right, and I get some money for you for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, so that we can do this right. Why does it seem like he's taking it upon himself that this needs to be done now? When I hear from you saying, let's do it right, and maybe we can probably find some money to extend this out so that it is done right.
Well,
Is he the Board of Education, or is he running the county?
Because he is on.
they're in trouble right now, I mean, financially. And you saw the number of teachers who left last year. And by the way, I did 2 letters of reference here in the past week for former colleagues. Some counties have reopened their hiring process right now, and guess where they're trying to recruit from? Carroll County. But right now in this whole process, we're, yes, if he wants to come to us and ask, I think that's going to happen here shortly, that we can help for a while, but they have to get efficient too. I mean, everybody's got to kick in. The state has to kick in some, the county's kicking in everything it can. The school board has to get efficient and also kick in some funds here to keep going. They could do it if they want to right now. I'm convinced of that. Do they want to? Not yet.
Is it conceivable that the board might not accept a recommendation that Guthrie makes on the 11th? And if so, what do you think the odds of that happening? Well, if they don't accept it, then what?
Then they have to go back and start over and do it right.
But from a financial standpoint, if they're running it.
Then they're gonna have to come to the commissioners and ask for some help and see how we work a plan to get this done. And keep in mind, before this started, the commissioners met with the Board of Ed, and yes, we're supportive of what you have to do. We know what you have to do. If we don't do something soon, the county's gonna start cracking, and it's gonna start breaking apart, and you start losing ground. It's gonna take years and years to build back what we have. We know that. They're at kind of the end of the rope here, and they wanted to have something done this year as far as finances for the schools. That's why they're pushing this year. But if they had to delay it, give us a good reason, we'll work with you. And it doesn't.
I went to a meeting last year and sat in, and I actually spoke with Mr. I'm losing his mind, the head of the committee.
John O'Neill.
John O'Neill.
And Mr. O'Neill seemed to be saying to me, because at the time they were thinking of sending the Shiloh kids to North Carroll, and I said, well, that kind of doesn't make sense to me. And he said, you know what, we can't do anything really until we figure out Charles Carroll. He goes, and that's going to take a while. So
quite honestly, he said the next stage is not gonna probably happen until maybe next September or October. This right now. Very loosey-goosey, so all of a sudden it seems like it went from kind of, well, I don't know, we gotta figure out Charles Cal to, boom, we need to get something done now.
Last Monday night, they met with the delegation in the afternoon, said there was no time frame. 2 hours later, said it has to be done by November.
In your opinion, is there a deadline on this?
Is what?
Is there a deadline? Should there be a deadline on this?
It doesn't have to be. It depends what we're gonna do.
Is the money
If
gonna
they
work?
are messing up and say, let's go back and get this straightened out, we'll find a way to make it all work. And, if we ask everybody in the county to help out here, how we're gonna, will you be willing to wait and let's do comprehensive redistricting, let's do it right? I think we could wait. If they can't do it, at least 3 months would have to be the time that they would have to do it before the April deadline, and 90 days and whatever it takes before that, or 120 days before, which puts it January. So it depends on how the school board wants to handle it. This is up to them, how they handle it, and I have my own opinions, and I guess I am too opinionated, but, they're elected to do their job. We have to let them do it. We're trying to give them guidelines or as much input as possible, and they're gonna have to make decisions this year, next year, when are they gonna have this ironed out?
But isn't it true though, that the Board of Commissioners, you 5, you're the top elected officials in our county. Everything else is subservient to you, including the school board. Has that been made known to them?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
I guess the ball kind of shifts to you guys now.
I said, we control the purse strings, so, and that goes a long way. My wife controls mine, so I know how to. Yes.
I know Commissioner Frazier said he opposed option 5. I know you said you've been having talks lately. Has he kind of changed his tune now, or is he kind of seemed like he was going to go, like, we need to do it all right now. Has that kind of changed? Because I know
He wants it done correctly. We're gonna meet, I said, 3 hours together, yes. I think he wants it done right, the right way, same as everybody else, but do it all at once. One time, do your comprehensive redistricting for the county. It's gonna affect a lot of people one time, but then every 3 to 5 years, revisit it. And you have to make these shifts that happen, pockets form of heavy populations here. You may have to shift some to balance the schools. That had been done in 15 years. And it's not very popular to do. What they're doing now is very unpopular. Believe me, I know. But it has to be done. If we don't, we're in trouble in Carroll County. And we have a good school system, a very strong school system. We have to keep it there. And to do so, we have to downsize it. Same as, you have to downsize a house sometimes or whatever, just a little smaller and still have everything we have going for us. And I will say at a high school level, if you offer a course, and I know between North Carolina and Manchester, they're busing students back and forth to fill a class. You have 10 here and 10 there. It doesn't work, it's not very efficient. If you have a school that operates at close to 100% utilization, you're at maximum operating for that school. But a school, and I was asked the question, what happens if we overcrowd a school? And I was told we can operate 120% by one of the, never mind, back people, but they can operate at that. 100 is ideal for the school. So over that a little bit doesn't hurt, or under that a little bit. When you get too low, then you can't offer course selections and programs. So that hurts a little bit. And the other thing is, I was told last meeting they went through elementary schools and they have some regional programs. Can't move those, can't move those, can't move those. They got to the autism program, well, we'll just move that.
Right.
We went through the whole thing and then we just moved the last one. It didn't make much sense to me the way they responded to it.
I just want to make one quick little story. My son goes to Westminster and he plays sports. I just spent last night in Urbana High School, and I've been through various of the Frederick County schools, and I got to tell you, when you go there, there's the old saying that you never get a second chance at a first impression. You walk into these places and you're just like, wow. Wow. And I've heard the term even embarrassing in terms of Carroll County facilities. And I'm talking sports fields, yes, and I know that doesn't equate to books. However, when you go to a place like that, that, you go, wow, I'd love to send my kids to this. You don't think that happens? And as you pointed out, when you start reading the papers, they're cutting budgets, they're cutting schools, they're closing schools. You don't think maybe people might think, geez, Carroll County, Frederick County. Just an impression to you. And turf
Right.
fields may not, like I said, turf fields, I understand, don't equate to buying books. However, sometimes an investment in something like that gives that first impression, gives an appeal when you're selling the county, when you're selling an area or selling a house, that goes, this is where I want to send my kids to school.
Be careful on turf fields. I got caught on this one. They're having some studies done here about the carpeting on it. That's, I don't know if it's true or not, but
Again, whether it's turf fields or blank fields, I don't care.
Yeah.
The point is that the fields are kept, the stadiums are
beautiful.
beautiful, they're gorgeous, and it attracts people.
yes, you're right. I can't argue at all. Go to some of the Howard
Sometimes you
County
gotta
schools.
invest in things like that to really, invest in schools, invest in turf fields, invest in something, instead of cutting. Just a note to you.
I will tell you, I met with the Montgomery County executive through Mako, and he said they had money for school. Well, we have extra $6 million. What would we do? I give it to the schools. Just had money to throw anywhere at anything. We don't have that luxury here, but
I understand.
but you're right. We are behind in a lot of things. Now, we do have a good system. We have good community, good support in the communities, but we need good schools and we need to keep what we have. And, we don't want to lose that. And I'm supportive of that, but you do have a valid point.
Thank you.
I'm a teacher in the Baltimore County School, and I work with a lot of interns and young teachers coming up in the field. And as a teacher, I don't see how Guthrie thinks that what's going on here is attractive to any teacher that wants to come into a county. They're not even applying to Carroll County to come here because they're saying not only the pay, which is one small point, but there's no job security here anymore. Because you could get a job and then your job's erased the next year. They're closing all these schools and the new teachers are the first to go. The teachers that are coming into the county, so I just feel like he's not looking at the whole picture. Even when he's looking at his education system, at his teachers, he can be cutting jobs like parent liaisons, which really aren't necessary jobs in the school system. He's talking now, focusing on regional schools. Regional schools have been in and out in this county 20 times over. They have a regional school, then they close it down and mainstream the kids. And Baltimore County works without regional schools. So those regional programs that they keep talking about, which is O'Neill's no excuse for not closing a lot of schools, shouldn't matter either. I just feel like I send my kids to Carroll County schools because of the education, and they don't go to my Baltimore County school. But to be honest with you, at this point, we're talking about selling our house and moving to the Hereford zone because of what's happening. And if the school closes, that's what we'll be doing. And I know a lot of other people that I know will be doing the same thing. So
I've heard this quite a few times, and just what you're saying, how are we going to attract a college student to come to Carroll County, just out of school, teaching degree? Are you going to have a job? Schools are closing. The negative press we're getting from this is horrendous.
these young interns coming to me and they're like, I'm like, where are you applying? And they're like, I wouldn't apply to Carroll County for anything. And I'm like, it's a great school system. They're like, still, I may not have a job in the next year. And so it's not just the money is what I'm trying to put across. And that's what he keeps. And my sister teaches in Carroll County. Yes, she would like to have a raise. I'm sure everybody would. But he can cut corners in other areas too that he's not looking at.
Yes, I have a niece in Baltimore County who decided she wanted to go to Carroll and said, I can't afford it.
Yeah, I really wanted to come to this school system. You couldn't pay me the money to come to this school system at this point because even though I praise the school, they've done wonders with my kids. I think it's an amazing school. I wouldn't move into Carroll County now just because
This has got to end
I
soon.
may not have a job anymore.
This negative press is killing us.
It is.
It
And
is.
it's really.
It's killing our community. And 15 years ago, we were pushing community schools, county.
Exactly.
So keep
And
that in mind.
That's the big thing. And the other point is that these teachers don't want to come into overcrowded classrooms. You close schools and you're saying we can operate at 120%. What are those classroom sizes going to be like? You're going to be teaching in a room full of 30, 35 kids. I don't want my kids in a classroom with 30, 35
Right.
kids. So he really needs to focus on doing, like you say, doing this the right way because right now he's not.
The most I ever taught was 40 in a class. That was horrendous.
I've had 30, and that's first grade, that's enough.
Yeah, that's horrendous. So, well, thank you guys for coming out tonight. I really appreciate this community and what you guys are doing here. I know it's an uphill battle, but keep it up. Don't quit.
Thank you, Commissioner Weaver. I think it's getting late. If there's nothing else that urgently needs addressed, Jill?
I just think it's an important thing to say. Noelle said it at the beginning of the meeting about how critical the steering committee has been, and I would like to think I speak for every person and every parent, every community member here tonight and who is not here. You guys are amazing. You're very fortunate. Those of us who are trying to keep up with the momentum and be here and support it and feel like it's already kind of driven our home lives, I cannot even imagine what it is like for yours. We are grateful. We are grateful for your intelligence, for your care, your concern, organizing it. It's an amazing community, but I thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I know you're trying to wrap up. I just have, and this probably will open up a whole can of worms, but I just have a question, and you don't have to respond to those of you on the committee that are organizing this. Just make a note of it. My kids would be sent to Spring Garden Elementary School, which is very far away in my opinion. And I know we want to keep Sandymount open. I want to keep Sandymount open, but the big if Sandymount is closed, is there a way to fight to say I would rather my child go to Robert Moten or Cranberry Station than 10 miles to Spring Garden? That's just.
So you're asking, do you think that there's going to be open enrollment? Is that what you're asking?
No, just like,
Waivers.
not waivers, but just redistrict it in a way that we are not sending Finksburg children 10 miles to Spring Garden. So that's just how I feel. I don't know if there's a way.
No, it's a really valid point, Joe.
If
Joy.
I have to, if Sandymount closes and it's gonna be horrible that it closes, if it does, can we redistrict it so we're not sending Finksburg children to Spring Garden? Can we ask them to say, well, I'd rather go to Robert Moten, or I'd rather go to Cranberry Station, or I'd rather go to Mechanicsville?
We can ask them. I think it's all going to be what
They've
drawn the
Yes.
boundaries
They-
already.
they have,
I mean,
right.
if they go with one of the options that closes us, they've told us what's going to happen, and I don't see them, I mean,
Sure.
if they're gonna move forward with this much opposition to those options, I don't think they're gonna listen a whole lot to us saying, okay, we'll take it, but we want different lines. Like, they're doing it to balance enrollment, so they really don't care. And from
Yeah,
what
I mean, the reason why they have to split us up 5 ways is because, you can't put all the capacity of this school into one other
Like,
school.
take out Spring Garden and put me in one of the other schools. You know what
But
I mean?
then, yeah.
That's what you need to be conveying right now
Yeah, I mean-
in your letters, and
And I was
just
gonna
say,
write that, and my husband was like, well, don't say that, because then they're gonna be like, oh, she's okay with closing Sandymount, we just have to move her here.
no.
I'm like you, my kids would go to Spring Garden, and if you calculate it, there are 4 elementary schools that are closer to my house than Spring Garden is. But the problem is, because we are so isolated, and Sandymount sits right in the middle of the district, so it's like the perfect school district, really.
Right.
It's a really imperfect solution, because they have to carve you up and send you somewhere that's completely unnatural, right?
Okay.
So, but there's not the spaces. I mean, they will just say there's not the spaces to put you all in Cranberry Station, because they've only got
they're
50
using
seats,
us
and
to
we,
fill the
Right.
interim.
yeah.
To that
So,
point, I know that I've read that they don't really care about how it's gonna affect the family life as far as daycares and stuff like that. But I live on the other side of 140, and all the public daycare centers are on this side of 140, so there would be no option for daycare for my children.
That's
Other than
been
drive
brought
all
up
the way down to
multiple times,
Westminster.
right? It's a huge concern for parents.
And then most of us work in Baltimore.
Right.
We have to drive south, so my children would go to Cranberry. I'd have to drive 15, 20 minutes north and 15, 20 minutes back just to get where I started,
Right,
to go to work.
right. I hope that
Yeah,
you've
sure.
shared that, and it's a shame that they said that they were discounting it, because it is a huge work-life factor for many, many, many people. So just convey that in your messages. Even though they say that they're not taking that into consideration, I do think it's an incredibly valid point, and that it should be conveyed by as many people that it will affect. Quite honestly. I did want to follow up one thing on Dale and Katie's question about the MGT study. At the town hall that we went to, that question was asked, and if I'm remembering correctly, the way that Mr. Guthrie responded was that the data that the MGT study conveyed as far as like capacity didn't jive with the state's formula for calculating capacity. So ultimately, they were unable to use the formula that the MGT study used to get their results because it wasn't recognized by the state. So even though that...
Why did they pay so much money if they didn't use the right formula?
Or why didn't they tell them to use the correct formula?
Right, well, that's, that's one of those questions that's out there. But you aren't the only person asking that question. It was brought up, and that was the response that was given.
We were going over the notes from a 2012 meeting to which Guthrie thanked his board, then told them that they really weren't qualified to make this type of decision, hired MGT, disregarded MGT, then went to the school board and said, okay, now you need to come up with another plan. That's fact. I just
Right.
find that very, what's that?
Well, no,
and
you
it's
say
funny.
that except for in the notes, it says he made a comment, the study commenced without clear guidelines or parameters.
Right.
I believe this time around, it was done again without clear parameters and guidelines, so.
Oh, I think this has been pointed out, but point it out again. Again, it's going back to what Mr. Guthrie said.
I just started doing this today.
Minutes from the meeting, but yeah, that's exactly what.
All right, so to wrap things up, we, again, really thank all of you for coming out tonight. Please spread the word to those that you talk to in the Finksburg community that our fight, is really not over. We still need to be vocal, still need to make sure that they hear our concerns. If you are interested in speaking at the meeting next Wednesday, please get together with Karen, and she'll help make sure that we cover all of our points as a community through the group of speakers that we gather. But we appreciate your time. Please feel free to take one of the brochures if it helps you with your talking points in your letters, and phone calls. Feel free to, some of us have had some very successful phone conversations with the Board of Ed members. So thank you again. Carpooling too. Carpooling for next Wednesday is Tara. Thanks, everybody.